Well, yep, we're good. Okay, everybody, so welcome to our recreational astronomy night. This is your 5-minute warning. Please make sure all your devices are off or muted or in airport mode or whatever will prevent it from going off in the middle of the show. If it rings, you're buying.
Yes. Yeah, how long do you need?
Hello and welcome to the October Recreational Astronomy Night for the Toronto Centre of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. My name is Tom Luton. Paul Markov, our usual host, is unavailable this evening. So, and the other change to our lineup tonight is Dennis Gray's The Sky This Month is going to unfortunately not be happening tonight. Dennis is a bit under the weather. But we do have a replacement presentation to fill in his slot. So tonight we've got Norm McCall discussing SkyThrall, a deep sky backyard observatory. We've got Clay Davies with his amazing telescope You Can Build, an 8-inch f8 Dobsonian. Ed Treijs will be talking about planetary puzzles and giving us a Long Branch Star Party update. And then to close it off, Mehdi Bozzo-Rey, Martin, my apologies, Labartette, and Claire Gong-Miniere. I apologize. I've gotten a name wrong there somewhere. We're talking about high school astronomy from the JWST data processing to amateur spectroscopy. And then I'll be back with the announcements for the evening. So to start things off, we have Norm McCall. Norm has been a longtime member of the RASC London Centre and has been a past president, vice president, and is currently their secretary. And he's joining us online from London.
Okay, well, thank you for the introduction. As I said, my name is Norman McCall. I joined the society when I was 57 years of age. And thank you for the opportunity to share my hobby, knowledge, and my experience as an amateur astronomer. I got into this rather late in life. At age 60, I decided, a little secret for you guys out there in my category, or maybe females as well, it might apply. At age 60, I decided to buy myself my first telescope, and I classified it as a early retirement present. Although I wasn't retiring, but I thought, why wait till you're 65 before you buy yourself a retirement present? So that's how I managed to get around that one. And then in 2017, approximately, or 16, I started planning. And then I believe it was in 2017, I built my first observatory, which is the one I'm discussing here. I'm not showing how it was constructed. I'm showing how it is being used. And it took me about 2+ years before I was able to do what I was trying to do, which was do electronically assisted astronomy using cameras for live viewing of deep sky objects. So that was really my goal and what I was trying to do. So let's move on from the second slide. All right. Okay, so the first question you're going to ask is, what is an urban deep sky observatory? First of all, this is a picture of my observatory. You'll see the pier mounted is mounted in cement, and there's a shed there. And if you notice carefully, there's 2 tracks on either side because the shed rolls off of the telescope to expose it to the sky. And I'll describe why I did it this way shortly. So what is an urban deep sky observatory? It's an astronomical observatory located in an urban environment in which city lighting interferes with and prevents visual observing. All right. Therefore, an urban observatory uses a large aperture telescope to capture a lot of light. It also uses a high-performance motorized go-to mount capable of precision computer guiding to accurately track objects at high magnification. Last of all, it also has a specialty high-resolution thermally cooled camera capable of making long exposure images. And it utilizes a computer software designed to filter, stack, and display capture deep sky images in real time for display on a 4K monitor. Okay, so what is a deep sky observatory used for? I made up this little banner. and it depicts, you can use it to observe the sun, you can use it to observe comets, the moon, galaxies, stars, etc. All right, all of these have been observed through my setup. So the question is, well, why would someone want to build a backyard urban observatory? I do live in the city of London near the outskirts, but it's not quite as bad as Toronto, by the way, in terms of light pollution. So what's the reason for building it? So this picture here depicts what I call first sunrise over my SkyThrall observatory, which was completed in 2017. And you may say, why was it called SkyThrall? It's called SkyThrall because it's sky enthralling. And I just came up with that name myself. With the backyard observatory, the equipment, so what's the advantages of having a backyard observatory? Well, first of all of the equipment is set up and skylined and ready for instant use. If you don't have an observatory, you have to haul everything out of the basement or wherever you've got it located, haul it into the backyard, find power or make it work. And next thing you know, you have to take it all back down, and it's quite an inconvenient chore. Meanwhile, SkyThrall can be opened and operating within approximately 10 minutes. If clouds blow in, it can be shut down and closed up in 10 minutes. And the convenience of use maximizes my financial investment because it's always there ready to go. And there's no need to travel outside of the city with the time involved to go to a dark sky site or the club's observatory site because it's all there in your backyard. So this is a little overview of the observatory. These are some early pictures. There's my telescope with the shed over the telescope and mount, and for when it's being stored. The floor is insulated and the walls are just not officially insulated. And that is what it looks like inside. It's a custom built roll off the shed observatory, which has several advantages. It keeps out the vermin, namely the skunks or anything else that comes walking through your backyard at night in the dark. Keeps them out. And in the wintertime, it keeps me toasty and warm in the winter. For those of the roll off the roof, you absolutely freeze when you're sitting there exposed to the elements with your beautiful telescope. This advantage is you can, I wouldn't say you put on shorts, but you certainly can enjoy it in comfort. You close the door and everything is connected to the telescope. It's pier mounted and skylined, a go-to telescope. The setup is designed for urban viewing of planetary and deep sky objects. And it uses state-of-the-art electronically assisted, which is EAA technology. That consists of a high-resolution 4K thermally cooled dedicated astronomy color camera. And it uses advanced computer software applications to support live stacking and real-time image processing. The system is optionally configurable with eyepieces for visual observation if you wish. All right, let's take a little look at the telescope. The telescope I am using, I consider it, the heart of the setup is the telescope. And I consider this Celestron 11 Edge Schmidt-Cassegrain to be a beautiful piece of optical engineering. For example, you see the diagram on the left, you see the telescope itself, right? I have to make my mouse work properly. There's a guide scope on top for those that are not familiar with things like this. The camera comes out the back at the bottom, and there's a filter wheel, and the optical train is here. And everything is connected in through a USB hub, which is underneath, connected to my computer. So the telescope itself is an SCC, which is Schmidt-Cassegrain, which is designed for both visual observation and for imaging with an astronomical CCD camera. You will notice that for example, there's at the front here, you will see a Schmidt-Cassegrain corrector plate, which delivers color-corrected chroma-free images. All right. Next, the edge corrector lens, which is located here. The light comes in through the front, bounces off the concave mirror up to the M2, the secondary mirror, and then down through the center, and goes through a corrector, which provides a distortion-free flat field across the whole of a full frame camera. All right, and with minimum amount of distortion, or practically no distortion. Okay, the focal length of the telescope is 2800 millimeters, which is 2.8 meters, but it is folded up as shown to make the device small. And it provides a high magnification, and the trade-off at this optical focal length is a narrower field of view. The optical aperture is 11 inches or 280 millimeters, and therefore it captures approximately 2,000 times the light of an eye. Hence, you're able to see objects that you can't visually see with your eyes. Okay, so what are the features of the equipment setup? First of all, it's sky aligned, as already said, and computer control go-to with a motorized mount, which enables the user to instantly select and move directly to the targets. A guide scope ensures, which is located on top, ensures accurate tracking of the mount. Multi-bandpass optical filters, which I showed you are located here, minimize the effect of urban light pollution. The color CCD astronomy camera is optimized for capturing planetary and deep sky objects, and that is located here. It is thermally cooled with a deep well, and this is the camera I was using at the time, which had a deep well of 63,000 kilo electrons. It is a large pixel at 4.6 micromillimeters and allows for a long time exposure for capture of more starlight. The equipment specifications, briefly for those that are interested, is a C11. It has an optical focal length of 2800 millimeters, which is f10, and it also can operate at that is a 0.7, not 7.0. 0.7, no, 7, that is correct, 7.0 at 1960 millimeters. And it uses a 0.7 focal reducer. Okay, and that will increase the field of view. The mount is a Celestron CGXL equatorial go-to. The current camera that I was using in this picture at this time was a ZWO ASI 294 MC Pro. And those are the specs that are there. It utilizes a guide scope, which has a 70 millimeters in diameter with a focal length of 400 millimeters, operating at f5.7. The guide camera is a QHY guide camera with 6 megapixel resolution, high speed, low noise, and a QE quantum efficiency of 78%. It used the 5-position filter field with urban sky multi-band pass filters. Okay, so let's just look at the comparison of a field of view of two cameras. This is my first camera, which I'm using in this presentation because it's based on older images, is a ASI 294 MC Pro. So if you were to try and take a picture of the moon, this is the field of view in red that you would see. My new camera, which I purchased recently, is an ASI 2400 MC Pro, which is a full frame camera. And so if you took a same picture of the moon, you would both have a higher resolution and you would get the full moon in the field of view. That explains how field of views can vary based on the camera that you are using. Okay, this is my basic computer system. It consists of 2 monitors, 4K monitors. The setup here is probably different ones. There's one 4K monitor and a regular HD monitor, and that's how I operate it. It's running Windows 10 on an Intel i7 multi-core computer. It utilizes a fast 2 terabyte solid state drive, and you must have a high speed USB 3 ports. In this case, I have a specialized card to support that, and dual high resolution monitors. The computer controls the skyline mount and runs the software applications, which include PhD2 for auto guiding. Stellarium sky map software application enables the user, which you see on the screen right here. This is Stellarium running. You can select any target you wish, and assuming it's in the field of in the sky available to see, not hidden behind a tree or maybe your house or some other object, and it will immediately go to that object. And so it's controlling the telescope as a go-to. Okay. You don't need to enter any coordinates or anything like that. It's pick and go. It uses on the right-hand monitor here, you see SharpCap running, which allows for live stacking of time-lapse exposures to enable viewing of faint objects. Okay, the Stellarium Planetarium software application. It uses a go-to plugin used to control the telescope mount and move the mount to the targets on the computer. So as you see in this picture on the left, there's Stellarium running, and you'll notice here, this might be the target I am aiming for, and it would immediately go to that. And Stellarium also provides you with a sample image of what that object happens to look like. In this case, it's the Eagle Eye Nebula. Of course, that is not an object that I am actually seeing, but that is an image that they've inserted into the program to let you, as a teaser, to let you see what the target looks like. All right. So here is a running the SharpCap software, and this is a 90-second exposure of Comet C2918 Y4 Atlas, and you can see the comet right here in the center. All right. Naturally, for those that don't know, it doesn't blaze across the field of view, but it is moving ever so slowly across the field of view, and that was a 90-second exposure. All right. The software application supports image and video capture, live image stacking, and enhancements for deep sky objects, including planetary nebula, and these are things you can see. Star clusters and distant galaxies, etc. And it uses video capture for possibly the sun, the moon, planets, asteroids, and comets. The auto guiding software is an application that runs continuously after you've arrived at the telescope has gone to the target, and it will cause the mount to stay and telescope to stay carefully tracking the targeted object. All right. So now I'm going to give you a bunch of samples of astro images that I have collected using my setup. Okay. So let's start off with some solar image showing sunspots. So this was a capture taken during a live event. It was actually with Boy Scouts, if I recall, from Ottawa. Someone wanted to give a present, do something for them. They came in contact with us, and I did a live afternoon presentation showing this image. And this is the very image taken on February 21 on my C11. And it has a solar filter, of course. Now, you'll notice this for those that are not too familiar, but hopefully these here are the sunspots. All right. I do not have a specialized camera that will make it even more enhanced. Those are dedicated scopes and cameras that literally cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, I sometimes have got the funny question, how do I know you're telling the truth? Maybe you're just making all of this up. So this image here is on the same day from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And in this image, which is taken by a totally different kind of a camera, and let's see if you've got more detail, but you see the same thing. The orientation is slightly different. Maybe it's a different time of day. I'm not exactly too sure. I suspect that is what it is. And you can see the same sunspots that I was showing the Boy Scouts. Or the Scouts. They may not have been Boy Scouts. All right. This here is a live stack image. And as I recall, this was taken with the same camera at a 4K resolution pixels of Galaxy M65. And you will see a satellite trail, I believe, where it's a jet. I'm not too sure. I think it's a satellite trail going through the image, which was captured. And as I recall, I think there were 90-second exposures. Let me just see. It's right on the screen here. The speed, no, 50-second exposure time. But I was doing live stacking. And you can see here, by the way, this was three stacked frames. There was 0 ignored. And the total exposure was 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So maybe I'm not reading it right because 3 times is 4 minutes. So maybe the time I can't quite read it over here is 90 seconds. Yes, the exposure is 90 seconds. And this is after three stacked images that the software stacked. And that was the view I was receiving. Okay. Now we go to Messier 65 in the Leo constellation. And, oh yeah, this is the same image, I believe, my first stacked image of the galaxy. And another early capture was the M65, M66 galaxies in Leo, which happened to be 35 million light years away. And just for those that are less knowledgeable, I would like to highlight the fact that just try to imagine that sounds 35 million light years away. So what? Well, it took the light 35 million light years to get to Earth. So that was well before the humans had evolved, if you believe in that, 6.5 million years ago. That was quite a long time ago. And obviously, we don't know what they look like today. We'd have to wait for another 35 million light years to find out. Okay. Now, these images, you may say, well, Norm, they're kind of fuzzy. They're not altogether perfect. Well, I never said I was a professional. I said I was an amateur. Okay, so M651 is a beautiful spiral galaxy, 32 million light years from Earth, and 109 light years in diameter. It is interacting with NGC 5194, a local galaxy. And it has a visual magnitude of 8.4. So in other words, it's fairly bright in the sky, relatively speaking. All right. This live stack was 41 images with 15 seconds exposure, which is a total time of 615 seconds or approximately 10 minutes. Messier 64. I love this one. It's what's called the Black or Evil Eye Galaxy. All right, and it's shown here in this image, like this. Okay, it is a spiral galaxy with a band of absorbing dust. It contains an estimated, grab your seats, 100 billion stars. I don't know how you could ever count that number, but obviously it's an estimate. But 100 billion stars. I don't know, that's stunning. The diameter is only 53,000 light years across. I said light years. It's not miles, it's not kilometers. It is light years across. In the space, things are very large. Okay, it is located only 17 million light years from Earth. So if you want to take a journey there, you better pack a big lunch. It is the blue or visual magnitude of 9.7. So in other words, it's more faint. All right. It was discovered in 1797 by Edward Peugeot. This image is a live stack of 35 images taken at a 60-second exposure, which is 2100 seconds, and divided by 60 to determine the number of minutes. Quite a long exposure. Okay, NGC 7331 It's called the Deer Lake group of galaxies, and this is quite an interesting thing. It is a beautiful spiral galaxy located 40 million light years away, just around the corner. And what is interesting, there are 5 or more background galaxies, which are shown here, by the way. And let me just point with them where the screen that you're looking at here. There's the main one. Here's these other galaxies are located here, here, and I believe here. I don't remember where the others are located. All right, and those, grab your seats, hold on tight, 294 to 365 billion light years from Earth. It has a visual magnitude of 9 point, the main galaxy, and you see 7331 of the magnitude of 9.48. It was discovered by William Herschel in 1784. Multiple supernova events have been observed in this galaxy. And this image consists of 80 stacked images of 15 seconds, which is essentially about 20 minutes of capture. Okay, let's give you a comparison image. This here was acquired by a professional telescope and obviously a professional image processor. I probably could get better results if I was better at it. And you can see the main galaxy with other galaxies nearby. All right. And here it is here with Stellarium. Stellarium shows you this image of what I was capturing. And the red is the camera that I would be using. And that would show the field of view that I would be capturing. All right. Now we move on to this image, which is NGC 6792, a Bard's spiral galaxy. All right, this was captured by accident. And my friend, for those that know him, is Peter Jedicke. He was online that evening and he had said, no, I'm going, let's have a look at NGC. And he gave me the number. Well, I, of course, being a little bit dyslexic, put in the wrong number. And so we're sitting there waiting for the image to come in. And this galaxy, by the way, is located 219 million, I said million, light years from Earth, and appears very faint in the image just up from the center. So we're dealing with this object right here. So what actually happened is that after about 10 minutes of stacking, I said to Peter, I says, I think I see something. And I could see this galaxy forming in the middle, but I have to realize I was on the wrong galaxy. And we decided to wait for another 10 minutes and to make I think it was a 20-minute capture. This is estimated to be approximately 93,000 light years in diameter, and it has a blue or visual magnitude of 13.4. So that means that it is pretty faint. All right, and hence you can see it very faintly here. I was quite delighted to have made this capture by accident. Okay. This was compiled. I think I'm supposed to have said this was discovered by, oh yeah, it was compiled into the catalog in that year, 1888. Okay, my image here consists of 97 stacked images of 15 seconds, which was 24 minutes of time. Okay. And this here is a sample image from the Digital Sky Survey image showing the same thing. The orientation may be different, but it shows you, no, this is 6792. Okay, and there's the location of it. Now we move on to Messier 57, which is the Ring Nebula. This is a very famous target for amateur astronomers. It's a planetary nebula formed by a starburst. The gas is being ionized by the collapsed star in the last stage of its evolution to a white dwarf star. All right. It is located approximately 2,500 light years away in our galaxy. Remember, our galaxy is 100,000 light years across. It is the nebula is 1.3 light years in diameter and has a visual magnitude of 9.7, so it's fairly easy to capture. And the image, the event that caused the nebula where the star collapsed occurred approximately 7,500 years ago. Okay, it was discovered by Charles Messier, a French astronomer, in 1797. Of course, at this time, they really didn't know exactly what they were looking at, by the way. And it took some amount of time before people analyzed this to determine that this was not a physical structure, meaning one solid object. Rather, it was a gas nebula. And that was a very interesting story how that discovery was proved, which was a surprise to everybody. All right. And this image is 47 stacked 15-second images for about 12 minutes of capture time. NGC 2392. This is the Eskimo cloud-faced nebula. And you can see it here. Look carefully. Right in the middle of the screen right here. And this is one of my favorite objects that I have managed to capture. Some say this object resembles a person's head surrounded by a parka hood, hence the term Eskimo Nebula. All right. Now, it's a beautiful double-shelled planetary nebula. I mean, there's multiple layers to this nebula. All right, it's located 6,500 light years away in our galaxy. And this is an enlarged image of it to show you. I just enlarged it to give a bit more detail. And you see the shape of it there. Looking very carefully at it, it's absolutely brilliant. It is a 0.34 light year in diameter, and it's approximately 10,000 years old, which is the end of the Ice Age, I believe, when it occurred. It was discovered by William Herschel in 1792, and the capture consisted of 34 stacked 15-second images, which is about 8.5 minutes of time. Now let's do an image comparison. This is what I captured. Let's hear the applause, please. Thank you very much. And then this is the image from Wikipedia. I don't know exactly who took it, but this is what I got out of from Wikipedia. And ignoring the color differences, those are just the offsets of the cameras and things like that. And colors are always created by humans, not necessarily what you see with your eyes. All right, of course, you're not seeing it with your eyes, it's on the camera. And this is the two images comparing the two. All right. I think what I did was pretty impressive. Okay, Messier 27, the Dumbbell Nebula, another famous target. Many people have taken hundreds of images of this planetary nebula. It's located 1,227 light years away in our galaxy. It is 1.4 light years in diameter. It's approximately 7,500 years old. And it's expanded to that size. So in other words, the gas and energy is moving very quickly, pushing the material out from the center star. Okay, it was discovered by Charles Messier in 1764. And the image that I captured was 20 stacked 15-second images for a total time of 5 minutes. Second last slide. Messier 16, the Eagle Nebula, is shown here. It's a planetary nebula in an open cluster consisting of approximately 8,000 stars, made famous by a Hubble picture. The core star is 80 solar masses and 1 million times the brightness of the sun. Located 5,700 light years away in our galaxy. There's more details. The gas is light. The gas here is 9.5 light years long and 1.4 light years in diameter. Discovered in 1794. And that's 7 minutes of exposure. And lastly, this is my last image, I believe, which is Messier 92, a globular cluster located in the northern, I spelled it wrong, constellation of Hercules, and is located in our galaxy 27 light years from Earth, apparent magnitude of 6.4, an estimated age of 11 billion years, and a diameter of approximately 109 light years, and a mass of about estimated at 300,000 suns. It was inadvertently discovered by Charles Messier in 1791, and in 1783, William Herschel resolved individual stars. And it was a 16-minute exposure. And that summarizes and completes my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Norm. Do we have any questions online?
Thank you. We have a few questions that have come online and several comments. Firstly, from Guy Yanez. I really enjoyed Denny's presentation and hope he's doing okay. Let's see, again, Guy Yanez also says, I think the question would be, why wouldn't you build an urban backyard observatory? Eric Brick says, you have some important accessories there, such as the focal reducer to speed things up. Guy Yanez then says, SCT celestials are great. I would probably keep it long, focal length for planetary, galaxies and planetary nebulae. Would the presenter consider adding a mid-sized refractor to his rig for nebulae? And that's one of our questions.
Well, yeah, everything costs money. And wish I could have had, I would also like a Tesla. So yeah, I'm making a joke there, but you can always add on. The thing is, everything you add on creates additional complexity. And it all depends on what you really enjoy doing and what your goal is. But I'm happy with what I have. And it certainly is a possibility for those that are more ambitious than I am.
So our next question comes from Lewis R. What was the cost of construction of the observing shed, and how long did it take to build?
Yeah, I did buy the shed. It's off the shelf. You can buy the shed at Home Depot or wherever. That was like $1,200 or something. When you add all the stuff up for the shed, not talking about equipment, I'm talking about the shed itself. Insulated floors, rails. I had to get the rails custom made. I ran a conduit into the house with 2 Ethernet connections, electrical power, cement the posts in the ground that hold the rails, that hold the wood that holds the rails, and all of the other things that go with it, the wood and the interior stuff that you need, like your bench, etc. The total cost, as I recall from the top of my head, I think was $6,500 for the observatory itself. And that includes the stones to finish it off and make it complete.
And that's all for our questions for the speaker.
Okay.
Do we have any questions here in the audience? All right. No. Norm, thank you once again for the wonderful talk.
You're welcome.
And we're going to go to fun facts while we set up for our next presenter.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. Today, I would like to tell you about an amazing telescope you can build, how you can build your own telescope which is optimized for the moon and planets based on proven design principles. And some tips for observing the moon and planets, even if you're not interested in building your own telescope. So some people might wonder, why observe the moon and planets? Well, here's a big part of the reason for me. I live right downtown Toronto. This is the 5th biggest city in North America. So you can imagine the light pollution is pretty bad, and it's only getting worse. 8 years ago, I bagged 5 Messier galaxies from my urban rooftop. Exceptional night. This is with a 6-inch reflector, but that was just once. But it's hard to navigate the night sky very often, but I still love observing the moon just as much as I did when I was a kid during the Apollo program. And the planets, I can find them easily, even right downtown, where it's hard to even see the constellation stars on many nights. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to get out under a really dark sky, take a long drive, and do some deep sky observing. But sometimes the sky doesn't cooperate. And I find increasingly when you get there, you'll find there's a whole lot of people with their light campsites lit up with bright tiki lights and wandering around with their tablets illuminating the landscape in white light. So I still do most of my observing at home nowadays. And just a 3-minute elevator ride away, I can share the view with all sorts of people who often get their very first look through a telescope. It's a whole lot of fun. It puts the party back in Star Party. Now, some other people who have similar observing situation down around the Los Angeles area have been involved in kind of a friendly competition for decades. They've been competing to see who can build the best planetary telescope. Now, their benchmark was a 10-inch f/16 Zeiss apochromatic refractor. That is one mean machine. Might cost you about as much as a house in Los Angeles. But for a tiny fraction of that cost, someone built a 13.75-inch Newtonian that delivered superior views on most nights. And they came up with a list of criteria. This is by iteration over decades. This is what they found is what worked for a wonderful planetary telescope. If you follow this criteria, if you're building such a telescope or having it made for you, you'll have a fine, fine planetary telescope. Interestingly enough, on the other side of the continent, Bob Royce came up with very similar criteria independently. You can find them here on his website. For those of you who don't know, a Newtonian telescope is a very simple telescope that it took a genius, Sir Isaac Newton, to invent it. It uses mirrors rather than lenses. Light comes down the tube, it's reflected off the primary mirror, a concave mirror, to the secondary mirror, where it is in turn reflected through the focuser to the eyepiece and the eye of the observer, and it has a lot of benefits. It also has some drawbacks, which these folks in Southern California, ALPO members, addressed and pretty much resolved. They found that provided that you have a first-class mirror, it has to be about f6 or longer. But f6 is enough if you've got a really good mirror. And if it's a really great mirror, there's no real benefit to getting a longer focal ratio. But amateurs like me may be wise to make such an instrument with a longer focal ratio, because I don't have the skills that some of the top opticians. I love making telescopes. This is the first one I built about 20 years ago, and it's a bit of a habit. But this telescope, built by Frank Dempsey, who's right over here, was a real eye-opener for me. He made his mirror and the telescope, and there's a reason why there's a long lineup for the eyepiece to have a look through this telescope. So a few years back, I joined the line, had a look, and there was Saturn in the eyepiece. Oh my, what a view. I'm talking the crepe ring in an 8-inch instrument. That was fantastic. I was so impressed that I built this telescope. I made my own mirror, my first mirror, and this was the result. It took me a long time to make that mirror, but you don't have to make a mirror to get a great telescope that's great for planets. If you go to any one of these fine opticians, you can get a mirror that will work just great. This particular telescope I built has these various features and parts. It pretty much follows Ed Grissom's so-called pinball machines criteria. I used a Kind Optics HC2A focuser. This is a low-profile focuser, which allowed me to use a small secondary mirror, just 1.31 inches, under 20% of the primary mirror size. You could use a moonlight if you can get a hold of one, or if you got deep pockets and want a delicious focuser, Starlight Instrument focuser is crazy overkill for a telescope such as this. You can go in the other direction. For under 10 bucks, you can put together a focuser from plumbing parts, and stellafate.org can show you how. For somewhere in between, it's still very inexpensive. You can go to one of the Toronto libraries that has a 3D printer or a commercial 3D printer. You can pick up a design for that for free and give it to them. They can print you a 3D focuser for a very modest cost. I was also fascinated by this focuser, which was designed by Pierre Lemay. One of them is good even for telescopes of f3 or faster. This is the size of this, my secondary mirror, 1/30th wave, 1.31 inches. That is, by some people say it's crazy overkill. You could just make your own using float glass, which is an option if you don't want to spend a lot of money. I'm curious about that. I'd like to see just how it works. If you test float glass, you might find it gives about 1/8 wave if you make a few of them and you keep the best one. Bob Royce was the design of the secondary mirror holder that I made. This is a commercial focuser, or rather mirror holder, which to the right previously displayed. The design calls for a curved spider so that you don't get these diffraction spikes around the planets or bright stars. It doesn't take a lot of curve to make those diffraction spikes invisible. Here's the spider that's designed by Bob Royce. You can go here if you want to make that one. So the focuser, secondary mirror, spider all fit up here in the upper optical assembly, which bolts to the cog box. That's the center of gravity box shown here under construction. You'll see that right inside it is a cardboard tube. Why cardboard? Why not carbon fiber or something like that? Well, those Alpo members in Southern California, they tested just about everything. Aluminum, steel, fiberglass, carbon fiber, and they found that nothing beat a plain old-fashioned John Dobson-style cardboard tube for thermal properties. The altitude bearings are made of 3/4 inch plywood. I drilled holes in them to lighten the load. They go here. And below that, bolted on again with wing nuts, is the lower optical assembly. It connects with a plate seen above at 3/4 inch plywood. And again, there's that tube. There are 3 holes in the sides, one of them is pictured here. They hold the boundary layer fans. Switch on the fans while you're looking through the eyepiece, and the image just cleans up in a real hurry, just in seconds. Below that is a 4th fan that that is also part of the design. Fans are required in this design, and that not only cools the primary mirror very quickly, it also cools the spider and secondary mirror. My particular telescope uses a 6-point mirror cell seen from below here and from above. And all of this fits in the lower optical assembly. Next, we go on to the rocker under construction here. This is 3/4 inch plywood for the rocker and altitude bearings, those semicircles. I cut out to reduce weight with a jigsaw, and the rocker weighs just 13 pounds fully assembled. I rounded off the edges so it would feel comfortable in the hands. It uses standard Dobsonian bearings. The plastic I used was just cut from cutting boards, and you can also use felt bearings for heavier motions, which are also very smooth, and they are very suitable for observing in windy situations. Here it is under construction. I'm gluing on the altitude bearings. You see below the rocker, I've glued on reinforcements to make it much more rigid, also hand grips to easily lift the telescope. That goes here. And the entire telescope fully assembled weighs about 56 pounds or 25 kilograms. I can easily lift the whole thing and carry it fair distances, no trouble at all. The interior I've painted with Krylon camouflage ultra flat black paint. I recommend you take several light coats with this. I find it is black enough that you do not need flocking. Not only for planetary magnifications, but also for deep sky magnifications, even RFT, the very low magnifications. In fact, I've put in flocking paper behind, looking through an eyepiece at every magnification, put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out. I can see absolutely no difference. Wonderful stuff. The exterior I painted Rust-Oleum black hammer finish. I find after it's cured, it's quite durable. It's also easy to repair and hides minor imperfections in your woodwork. It took me 4 years on and off to make the mirror. I used cerium oxide, red rouge, and black rouge to achieve the polish that I really wanted after grinding the mirror. And just not that long ago, it seems, I got it to the figuring stage when I was finally satisfied with the polish. I rushed through the figuring so I could attend my first stellophane this summer. It's the great granddaddy of amateur telescope making conventions, and it was a blast. Yeah, my first stellophane, I've wanted to go to one for about 20 years. Hey, there's Lance Clark. He provided the grits for making my first mirror. And this is Asif Khan. He came all the way from India with his award-winning second place air travel telescope. You'll see right at the top of this telescope, there is a plumbing parts focuser. Not only is it good enough, but it is very lightweight, something which is valuable in an air travel telescope. There are all kinds of cool, funky designs, old school pipe mount, and this one was actually cut with a laser cutter, plywood with a computer-controlled laser cutter. Binocular observing chair, very comfortable for big binoculars, and check out the legs on this equatorial mount. Hockey sticks, rescued from a hockey rink. Cellophane gives extra points if you find economical materials and tools and so on that simplify and reduce the cost of making your telescope. This one is cedar strip, much like a cedar strip canoe. This one looks really portable to me. And some very unusual and interesting designs, including refractors and compound telescopes. This one won 2 awards last year, both for optics and mechanical design. And hey, this handsome fellow showed up, and I was urged to enter my yet incomplete, no fans installed yet. The mirror wasn't even illuminized yet, but the registrar urged me to compete anyway. Why? Because they want to have a lot of telescopes on the field. Rough count, there were maybe 30 telescopes there. There are maybe 1,000 people in attendance. So it gives them just one more telescope to look at. While I didn't win any awards, Alan Ward of the RASC Sudbury was kind enough to illuminize my mirror. He did 18 mirrors that weekend, hardworking man. Thank you, Alan. I really love your handiwork. The next day, my mirror was double passed, auto-culminator tested, and it was pronounced to have a wicked turned down edge, a textbook turned down edge. Now, that's not a good thing, but Dave Kelly, who knows a thing or two about optics, he's said to have several of his optics in outer space. Well, he said, mask 3/8 of an inch off the edge, use it and enjoy it. It's smooth other than the edge. Fix it when you have the patience. Use it and enjoy it. Well, when I got back to Toronto, I took Iman for her first night on the town at Bayview Village Park. This image generously provided by Constantine Polterek. Thank you, Constantine. When I got back home later that night, I remembered, oh, I didn't put the mask in. It still provided pretty good images, but at home, seeing had improved. Jupiter was near zenith, almost straight up. And at 197 power, I observed Jupiter, and oh my. I've never seen more detail than that in any scope I've observed Jupiter in, including an 18-inch obsession, as I recall. Now, how could that possibly be? Well, it was masked to just 7 inches or so, 180 millimeters. So how is this possible? Well, I think part of it is that seeing is around where I usually observe, usually the limiting factor. Apart from that, I think it's the design of this telescope. It's a big tube, oversized, some would say, and the fans were not yet installed, but it was polished with black rouge. Maybe that helped. The mirror was smooth, and the turned down edge was masked. So that's what I conclude. If you follow this design, you can have a very fine planetary telescope. I also concluded after this long journey that in spite of all the difficulties and struggles I had doing this mirror independently without a master at my side to guide me, that I love making mirrors. My first mirror won't be my last. So how can you build your own planetary Newtonian? Again, if you follow these criteria, in my experience, you really can't go wrong. And there are some books in the Toronto library system you can order. If there's any one book about making telescopes I can recommend, it's this one by Jean Texereau, How to Make a Telescope. Especially great if you are making a mirror. Very concise, very good instructions that I followed, and they really helped me out. There's a lot of great information online. If you follow these links, if you're interested in making your telescope for planetary observing specialized, it's different from making one for deep sky. Check out all of these links if you want to do it, because there's some really valuable information in each one of them. Bob Royce actually has not only plans, Yeah, plans for making the blueprints basically, but also construction notes on putting it together. Mel Bartels has some outstanding software online that you can operate, all free for the asking. Wonderful tools. Thank you, Mel. I mean, again, very helpful. If you're interested in observing the moon and planets, getting more out of the telescope, which maybe you already have, definitely check out ALPO. They specialize in observing solar system objects, including the moon and planets. Bob Royce also has some very good observing tips for the moon and planets. And for eyepieces, I favor orthoscopics, Plossls, simple eyepieces I find work best. I also enjoy observing with colored filters. They've really fallen out of favor, but I think they're wonderful. Particularly a red filter when observing the moon, especially when it's near full. When you're observing far away from the lunar terminator, you can see all kinds of detail that you would definitely not be able to see otherwise. Other color filters are useful for teasing out different features on various planets. And for Mars and for Jupiter, but particularly for Mars, I find the Bader contrast booster is by far the best one filter you can use. Now, you gotta collimate your Newtonian to get the best views. You wouldn't use a, you wouldn't play a guitar without tuning it first. You shouldn't use a Newtonian without first collimating it. It's really not that hard once you learn how. And you don't need to spend a lot of money on collimation tools for a telescope at f6 or longer, such as a planetary telescope. All you need is a black plastic 35 millimeter film can. I kid you not, you can get it from free at a photo finishing center, you know, just for the asking. They might have a half a dozen of them under the counter. Gary Saronic can show you how you can just drill a hole in the bottom and how to use it. And beyond that, to get the best possible collimation and the best possible results out of the telescope you have, Gary shows you no tools collimation. That's star test collimation. It gives you the best collimation you can get and the best views from your telescope. Bob Royce has lots of great advice for observers, and so does Cloudy Nights. You've got to read these threads, particularly the bottom one if you're interested in building a telescope for observing the moon and planets, as well as just observing. So, should you build your own planetary optimized telescope? Well, if you love to build and if you love to observe the moon and planets, sure. I built a number of telescopes. I really enjoyed it, and I think you'll really enjoy the project. But warning, you might find it's habit forming. Once I built one, I wanted to build another, just like making mirrors. But you don't need to make your own telescope to really enjoy observing the moon and planets. If you just get out under the sky, follow the tips, and share the view. Because if you do, you're going to have a lot of fun. So thanks very much, everybody, for listening. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Hi.
Whoa, just a second.
Thank you. Two questions. I live downtown also, so I don't know if it's possible to join you when you have those observation nights. I see some people in those photos. Is that like private, or is there a certain address and time where we can contact you?
Well, sure, I could have you over. I kind of, usually they're kind of spur of the moment, but are you on Facebook possibly?
Yeah, I am. I mean, not a group still of this association, but I can be, yeah.
Sure, I could just talk to me after. I can, sure, we can have you over sometime and we can do some observing.
Okay, as long as it's not intruding or anything.
Oh,
like this.
no problem. Just, you know,
just based on the
as my
photos.
private guest. It's not public. It's just basically people who live in the building and they're guests. But sure,
Oh,
be
okay.
my guest.
Thank you. And the second question, just out of curiosity, I know we are very limited with time, but I mean, when I see what you do and when I hear you, just similar to the guy that had a presentation before, I think this is genius work. Like, can you just tell us in 1 minute or less or a few sentences, how did this start? Like, how can you build these things? I cannot even begin to fathom where would I start from. I'm not asking for I'm just kind of amazed at what people can do, and I just want to hear a little bit of your story, if that's possible.
Well,
Thank you.
what happened, how I got started building telescopes was I was not completely satisfied with the first telescope that I bought after I got back into astronomy after a long layoff when I was in my 40s. And I was just looking for a link here. But anyway, when they have the video up, you can go to Bob Royce's website. He shows you what I mentioned, that he's got plans and construction notes. I followed his plans pretty much, made a couple little tweaks, and that's how I built my first telescope. And beyond that, I bought the Dobsonian telescope. It's available from the Toronto Library System for free, so you can check that out. There's lots of books actually in the Toronto Library System about building telescopes. So that's something you can do. I'm no genius. I'm handy, but I'm really no genius. If you're handy, if you like to build things, you can do it. Start with something pretty basic, like the Stellafane telescope is very simple. If you buy the optics, you could probably put it together in a weekend if you're really handy. So baby steps in the beginning, and you can get into more advanced telescopes as you go along. But if you make one, it could be risky because the first thing you might want to make another one. And
why did you paint the outside black? Because I can just see in a dark sky sight, you go, where is my telescope crash?
That's a good question. The reason I painted black was for thermal emissivity. The black paint, when I painted it, was the paint that, actually a flat black in particular, it cools off fastest. And often when the planets are in the west and seeing is sometimes very good, I want to be able to have that telescope well cooled. So the black throws off the heat faster than white paint. It's like if you look at a black car parked next to a white car on a clear night, the black paint's going to absorb the heat of the sun really fast in the daytime. It gets really hot. Whereas the white car, it'll reflect that heat of the sun. But at night, if you look at those same two cars sitting side by side, and the black car will dew up in a hurry. It throws off that heat so fast, and that it just reflects the heat into space. It cools off and it dews up. So it cools off fast, but you might get some dew in a hurry too. So dew heaters or dew control of some kind is beneficial as well for your finders, for your eyepieces and so on. One thing I found effective just recently was covering up with, those reflective windshield covers you might put in your car on a hot sunny day in the summer. Well, if you cut those up and make some things that can wrap around the end of your finder, extend it, put some black flocking paper on the inside, and cover up your eyepiece when it's not in use. This can keep them from getting dew, and it's remarkably effective without even using a dew heater. So, long story short, that's why I painted it black, so it would cool off fast.
All right. All right, so we've got some online questions, and then we'll go back to questions from the audience.
Thank you. So we have a bunch of questions and comments online, and I'll try to go through them best as I can one by one. Guy Yanis says, Stellafane in Vapik, what a great place. Guy Yanis then says, is polishing your own mirror still beats commercial alternatives out there? I mean, besides the wonderful journey of DIY?
It can. It is a wonderful journey of DIY. I just loved making a mirror. I was very surprised how much I enjoyed it. As far as the quality is concerned, you can make a good mirror. This was my first try. My mirror had a turned down edge, which is not a good thing. But by masking that edge, I ended up with a good mirror if we do away with that bad edge of the mirror. So it worked for me. I've got so little experience with this, it's difficult for me to answer, but I have looked through many telescopes, including large telescopes and medium-sized ones, say 14.5-inch f4.2. So that's a fast mirror, and it's a fairly large one, made by an amateur, and it was the equal, in my opinion, of a Zambuto mirror, which is Carl Zambuto. He makes some of the best mirrors around. As I recall, it was just a magnificent view. So amateurs can make fantastic mirrors. It's easier if it's a longer focal ratio. So if you're making a planetary scope, if you make it f6, f8, f10, you can, even on your first try, I think, especially f8, f10, I think you can probably make a very good mirror. But if you're going to go down this route, if you can, learn from a master. Don't do what I did. Don't try to learn it over the internet. Don't try to learn from books. Try to get somebody who's at least an experienced mirror maker, ideally a master who can guide you and show you those strokes and help you fix problems and so on.
Tarek Al-Hamrani, who is actually from the UAE and joining us from there, says, I'm using my 7-inch Mac and 8-inch Newt. Both are nice. Nice view, really, and images, but larger will be better for imaging for me, because we have nice, excellent seeing, and sometimes above average. Guy Yanis then says, orthos are way better for observing planets, no question about it. Tariq then says, I have the first 2 beta filters, and people told me go for pluses for planetary view. To which Guy Yanis then says, beta filters are great. It is just that those design ripples stand in the way. Tariq then says, I will love to build if I can build. Louis R. says, great presentation, thanks.
Thank you.
And Guy ends our question to see for this talk with, this was very, very motivational. I'm not sure if I am hand-skilled or genius. I may get, sorry.
I'm no genius either, by the way. I'm no genius. I'm handy, but I'm not a cabinet maker. I'm not a machinist or anything like that. I'm just handy and pretty determined and stubborn. But if that suits, if that's about where you are, yes, you can still make a telescope, especially if you take a class or something like that. It's another option if it's available around you.
Thank you. That's questions and comments from online.
Great.
We are running a little behind, so I'm going to ask that if anyone's got any additional questions in the audience for Clay, if they could wait until the end of the presentation. Thank you very much again, Clay, for a wonderful talk. And we're going to quickly go to fun facts while we get set up for Ed's presentation.
Okay, I've got a little bit of an update about our Long Branch star parties, which is a new thing that we're doing for city star parties, and also some planetary puzzles, which in this case does not include how do I observe them. First, I would just want to hit what's happening at the Long Branch star parties, because they are a new thing. We went ahead in July and August, and we were clouded out in September. To be honest, the August one was very marginal. We barely could see Saturn, but we did see Saturn. We're getting both Toronto Centre and Mississauga Centre members coming out there, and Mississauga Centre may actually help out from time to time for hosting. So it's kind of nice to have the two centres working together, in my opinion. Despite the lack of advertising publicity, we're getting quite a few non-members coming. The park is actually fairly busy by fairly well used by local residents, but we also had, in August, we had someone come from Liberty Village to talk to us about dark sky sites and other topics like that. So word is getting out despite the lack of advertising. Interestingly enough, in the July one, someone actually came by with his 8-inch, I think it was, Dobsonian, and he was just going to observe. He didn't even know we were going to be there, and we looked through his telescope and told him, oh boy, you really need collimation. In the August star party, a woman said, I bought this telescope for my kids 2 years ago, and I never managed to make it to use it. And it was like a 4.5-inch department store reflector. When we put an eyepiece in it and finally figured out where the focus was, the image of Saturn was actually pretty good. So we said, it works, except your eyepieces are like $2 plastic thingamabobs, and that's like the first thing you would replace, but that your telescope does work. So we're getting all these people coming out, and maybe they will become members or become more interested. So it's really working as an unofficial outreach event, and we're not going to make it an official outreach event. But it really, if you like talking to members of the public, that's great, because honestly, it's still a city star party. You're not going to complete your Herschel 400 list from Long Branch or Bayview Park. The number of your targets that you can use is fairly limited, but they're the targets that people will like, and Jupiter and Saturn are going to be in the skies for the next few months. So it's a lot of views that you're getting from kids and retirees and everyone in between. So for our next event, we're going to try to do it in the first clear night of October 14th, 15th, or the 21st, 22nd. We have to straighten out some wrinkles in the go, no-go call, because we're still new at this, but we'll figure it out. So that's pretty much the Long Branch Star Party update. Oops. Okay, so when you're puzzled by planets, I'm not talking about what has NASA found. I'm talking about actually a puzzle. A while ago, I stopped by a local hardware store, and they had these things. So I said, well, why not? So if the camera wants to put it on here, here's the actual box. Nice box. Maybe it'll fall over, add a little bit of drama to the presentation. There are only 8 planets in this puzzle, which puzzles me a little bit, because don't ask me about Pluto. Oops, again. So I took it to the cottage when I was visiting a friend. I thought the weather might be kind of not so great. And 2,000 pieces is a lot of pieces. We put it out on the main table, which is quite a large table. And we realized that each planet is kind of a different color and shape. They're all kind of separate. It's not like one big piece that has 8 planets. It's 8 separate planets. So we started separating things out by, I think this is this planet, and I think this might be that planet. So off we went. Whoops. I'm going to figure this out. So you can either kind of look at it and go, oh, this is like way too much. I think I'm going to have a beer. Or you can kind of persevere. My friend gave up, and he's a big fan of Ernest Shackleton and read all about his voyage in the rowboat for like 1,500 kilometers in the South Atlantic, but he gave up. But I said, the heck, I've got to figure something out here, because now we have taken over the kitchen table, and let's see what we can actually do with this. So I said, we're going to start working on a planet. And what planet would I work on first? And I think anyone who reads my postings on our forum know what planet I would choose. Anyone want to yell it out? Mercury, you bet. It's also the smallest planet, and I think they come in different sizes. So I said I would start with the smallest planet, and it actually, as you can see in the picture there, it's like a partially assembled Mercury. It actually fits on their sheet. It's about the same size as Jupiter on the image sheet. Unfortunately, the image of Mercury on that sheet is so small you can't make out any details. So I'm going, like, it's a bunch of gray pieces, and there are other gray pieces, there are other like dark pieces. One thing I will say, if you're trying to put this puzzle together, I was doing it under LED lights, which were supposedly white and probably fairly good, but you probably want the best color rendition possible because the colors are very subtle and you're trying to separate out 8 different planets. And is that kind of a beigey gray, or is that a purplish gray, or is that a grayish gray? And I found it was pretty tough to figure that one out. And Mercury, in fact, is a lot of gray pieces. So anyway, it was divide and conquer, and after a couple of days we realized of eating outside on the picnic table, I realized that I had to pretty much fish or cut bait, as they say in the... So I started putting away all the planets except the pieces that could possibly be Mercury, and eventually, like, you're down to a few pieces, and the piece that you tried 6 times and said, no, this doesn't actually fit anywhere, suddenly fits. It's pretty inexplicable. And so I will show people what I have. And this is, this, by the way, is like what your 2,000 pieces or almost 2,000 pieces are. And in here, I don't know whether we can focus on it or whether we want to take it in. This is the Mercury that I actually put together. It is missing one edge piece. And I just went through all the edge pieces and going, nope, I've got all the possible ones, but obviously there's an edge piece somewhere in that bag of 1,900 and something or other pieces. So I don't know quite what to do, but I don't want to take this apart because, darn it, it took a while. So the final thing I will say is, if you are intrigued by this, do you need a Christmas present? Because I have some of these with me tonight, and they're available for $20 a piece. I only take cash, but $20, and $10 will go as a donation to the Toronto Centre. So it's a little bit of a fundraising thing, and like I say, I have them with me. If you tap me on the shoulder after the presentation, $20, and you can walk away with one of these of your own, and you can see how you do, and love to hear about it. Maybe we need a YouTube channel for, and here's my attempt on the puzzle. So it's limited quantities, but like I say, let me know. Donation, it's a DIY project of the rainy night and cloudy sky kind of thing. And that's pretty much it for my presentation.
Thank you very much. We got one question.
Do you supply the kitchen table?
I find that most people have a kitchen table already. In this case, my friend would probably gladly sell you that table for a few $1,000s because it's a fancy live edge table, and there's a whole story to go with that one. Not that particular table. He's probably going to be loath to sell it to you. But IKEA, I mean, there's now one downtown, I understand, as well as a Etobicoke one. And to be honest, though, you need something bigger than a kitchen table. Like, I'm thinking of the old model railwayers, like back in the 50s and 60s, who would take over the entire basement and have some, like 10 tables. That's pretty much what you need, in my judgment. Okay, that's
All
it.
right.
Thank you very much.
And, yep, that looks like it for questions. So, fun facts, and then we'll go on to our final speaker.
Good evening, everyone. So first, thank you for attending this session. My name is Mehdi, and this is Claire and Martin. So tonight, we're going to talk about the James Webb Space Telescope, how to handle data sets from this wonderful piece of equipment, and also the Astronomy Club at the Lycée Français of Toronto, and what did lead us to wondering what to do about spectroscopy and why it is so interesting to us. So a bit recap of what we've done so far in the last few years at the Lycée Français Toronto. So the club format is one night a week, like a one-hour session. It's highly focused on software and data processing. Typically what we do is we use PixInsight, for example, in order to process data from the Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, data you acquired north of Toronto, and also planetary data from whatever is in flight between Earth and some planets. Other software that we use are Telescopius, for example, Stellarium, and the USGS ICs, especially for processing images from planetary missions. We do some programming. Some must-have on the Python side are AstroPy and Pandas, for example. And we do our programming exercises, let's put it this way, using Jupyter Notebooks because it makes it easy to actually share commands and code as well. We also use like state-of-the-art industry software like GitHub for collaboration, exchanging data and files. And 1 year, we even used Overleaf in order to use LaTeX in order to produce our own textbook. So now, Claire and Martin.
So here you can see two images of the Pillars of Recreation, which is part of the Eagle Nebula, or M16, in the Serpens constellation. The image on the left is taken by the James Webb Space Telescope, and the image on the right is taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. The difference in amount of stars and detail is because the James Webb Space Telescope is an infrared telescope and can therefore see through the cosmic dust, whilst the Hubble Space Telescope's wavelengths are in near-infrared, visible light, and ultraviolet.
So hello everyone. So here's another example of images that we've processed through PixInsight. So those are multiple images that we call a mosaic because when put together, they form one big picture. So here it's part of the sky. So when you look up to the sky, it's at the intersection of the Sagittarius and the Corona Australis constellations. And so, for example, mosaic are what is used in astronomy to picture galaxies, especially the Milky Way. So we put together images to form one big picture because the Milky Way is a very big object in space that requires a lot of data to be seen in total in one picture. So now we've talked about the club, we'll talk about spectroscopy, its principles and spaces. So what is spectroscopy? So the official definition is the study of matter through movements by analyzing a light spectrum. So for this, we need to know what is light exactly and physically speaking. Light is composed of different wavelengths, and when we put all those wavelengths together, it forms a spectrum. So here you can see the image is an image of an electromagnetic spectrum, so basically the light spectrum. You see a little bit apart over there, which is called the visible light. So visible light is everything we can see. It's a very small portion of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So the shorter wavelengths are on the left here, and you have UV light, X-rays, or gammas, and they contain more energy because each wavelength is associated to a certain level of energy. On the other hand, you have longer wavelengths, so for example, the infrared, which are the objects of interest of the new James Webb Space Telescope, or even longer wavelengths, the microwaves or the radio waves. And so those are the wavelengths that hold the less energy. So now that we've discussed about the basis of spectroscopy and light, we can go through an example of the hydrogen atom. So the hydrogen atom is the most basic element of the table of elements. The hydrogen only contains one proton in its nucleus and one electron surrounding it. So what happens when light goes through an hydrogen atom? It will hit the atom with its energy, and it will get the electron surrounding the atom a sort of energy spike. It will excite the electron. And the electron, when hit by a certain amount of energy, will be able to go onto an upper level. So you can see here there's some sort of like different lines surrounding the hydrogen nucleus, and each line represents an energy level. So as I said, when hit by a certain energy level, the electron will get to a superior energy, and this for each energy. So for example, if say it gets a little bit of energy, it will go on the first one, more energy on the second one, etc., etc. And so here, so it's a little bit small, but this is what we call an absorption spectra. And so you see that, for example, for this long wavelength, so this wavelength that contains little energy, it's the amount of energy necessary, the exact amount of energy necessary to get the electron into its first excited state. And this wavelength is reported here on the absorption spectra because it is absorbed by the hydrogen atom. And it's the exact same principle for the other three wavelengths that are also reported in the absorption spectra. And so you can see this. So this is what we call the absorption spectra of the hydrogen. And what's cool about it is that it's unique to the hydrogen atom, meaning that when you see this kind of spectra, you know for sure that that's the hydrogen atom that has been observed. On the other hand, you have also emission spectra, and you can see that an emission spectra is basically the opposite of an absorption spectra. And so this is simply because the emission spectra is the light that will be emitted by the energy, in other words, because energy and lights are strongly associated together, that will be emitted by the hydrogen atom when the electrons goes from their excited states to their normal states. So when the electron is on the first energy level here, it will go back onto its original state, releasing little energy that is transform into a wavelength, light wavelength that is reported here on the emission spectra. And again, it's the same principle for all the other energy levels. And so we get this emission spectra that is also unique to hydrogen atoms. And so this example works for every molecule or elements that we have in the world, in reality. And this is how, using spectroscopy, we can study matter. Because using, like when we focus on an object, on an element, we'll have a specific absorption and emission spectra that act like a finger footprint of the elements, and so we can determine what elements we're looking at. So speaking of absorption spectra, here's another example, which is the absorption spectra of the sun, or more precisely, the sun's atmosphere. So here we can see there's various rays that are present on the absorption spectra. And so what's interesting is when you look, for example, at ray H right there, G, F, and C. Those are rays that are specific to the hydrogen atom. So what did we learn from this is that the sun atmosphere contains hydrogen. Similarly, you can find rays K and D that are specific to the helium atom. And so the sun atmosphere is made mainly of hydrogen and helium. And through more experiences, scientists have found that the sun's atmosphere is precisely made of 74% hydrogen and 25% helium. So this was a way that scientists discovered and understood better the sun's atmosphere using light. And we can do this for the sun, but we can also do this for any other star that we can look through using, for example, the James Webb Space Telescope, which will provide us very precise data on the star. But we can also use this similar kind of technology and the similar basics of spectroscopy to study, for example, exoplanets or planets in our solar system and their atmosphere. Also, one interesting fact is that the sun is what we call in physics a black body, which is an ideal object that emits light through thermal energy.
So now that we've presented to you spectroscopy, I will talk about another concept that we have talked about in the Astronomy Club, which is the Doppler effect in spectroscopy. So the Doppler effect, you might or not know about it, and it's when a police car, for example, comes towards us, the sound is high in pitch because there is a high frequency, the frequency is high and the wavelength is shorter. And when the car passes us, the sound is lower because this time the frequency is low and the wavelength is longer. Sound and light behave both like waves, so the same process applies to light. Blue light is a short wavelength, and it's between 450 and 495 nanometers long, and the red light has a longer wavelength of 625 to 740 nanometers. So therefore, in space, when an object is coming towards us, there is a something that we call a blue shift, due to the fact that the wavelengths are shorter and the frequency is higher. When an object is moving away from us, there is something called the red shift, due to the fact that wavelengths are longer and the frequency is lower. So here you can see an example of a red shift. You can also find out how fast a galaxy is moving using this red shift or blue shift. The key difference between prism spectra and grating spectra is that in prism spectra, the spectrum is created due to the dispersion of light, whereas in grating spectra, the spectrum is created due to the diffraction of light. So in this image taken by the T17, which is part of the iTelescope network, the overexposure causes a spike. This really shows you the impact of exposure on taking a good image. So what are the plans of this year for the club? Well, you can see a typical acquisition on the right of the slide. The spectrum of Vega was taken by the old Hastings Observatory using the Star Analyzer 100 grating. The star is clearly visible, as well as the first order spectrum. The picture is in colors because a DSLR was used for the acquisition. To conclude, this year we will concentrate on taking measurements of the iTelescope T17 and being able to take good pictures, hopefully much better than the one on the previous slide. There is a huge difference between knowing the technical aspect of taking an image and the reality of taking this image. Our other plans are also to take measurements in Ontario and also explore SDSS data, which is Slow and Digital Sky Survey, using Python. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Any questions? No? And, oh, but we do have some online.
Just a question for myself. I'm wondering if you guys are writing a blog documenting this research, and whether you guys are publishing any of your Jupyter notebooks.
The answer is yes, and Claire just been elected as writer. But no, so what I do is every week when I do present the session, I have a Google Slides presentation, and I make everything available on our blog, hosted, I think partially at the Lycée Français. And the Jupyter notebooks are available on GitHub. So please feel free. Sorry? Can you say that?
Do you have
not right now, but yeah, give me your email address and I'll make sure you get it.
Right. No other questions? Okay, then. So then that concludes the presentations for the evening. I'd like to thank all our speakers and give us a moment to get set up for the announcements. All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. And let's get into our announcements. So we have two types of meetings here at the Science Center and online. You've just seen one of our recreational astronomy nights, and in a couple weeks' time, we're going to have one of our speakers nights in which we're going to have a member of the astronomical community come and give us a talk. If you're watching us live on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. And in the future, please say hello in the chat, enter some questions for presenters as others have already done. If you're a new member joining us on the chat, please introduce yourself. And if you're coming to us from far, far away, let us know where you're coming from. And on a side note, I should have asked this at the very beginning, can I just get a quick show of hands? Is there anyone here for the very first time? Oh, wow. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So our next Speakers Night meeting, like I said, is in a couple of weeks on the 18th of October at 7:30 p.m. It's online. Professor Margaret Campbell Brown of the Department of Physics and Astronomy at University of Western Ontario will be discussing When Worlds Collide, Asteroids, Comets, and the Earth. Online on YouTube at rastoronto.live. And then our next Recreational Astronomy Night is the 1st of November, both in person and online. Andy Beaton will be discussing the sky this month. Frank Dempsey will be talking about variable star photometry using a photoelectric photometer, still valuable after 35 years. And we currently have a presentation slot available. If you'd like to present something, please contact Paul Markov. Now, I'd like to tell everyone that we have created the position of membership advisor. This is someone who will be formally welcoming new members to the Toronto Centre, and we'll be providing them with a document that will contain all you need to know about being a Toronto Centre member, things about the basics on our programming and events and volunteering and the contacts list, and we'll be acting as our person that you can reach out and talk to if you have questions. And I'm pleased to announce that Grace Horvatin has taken on this wonderful role and responsibility. And thank you very much, Grace. Now, coming up here at the Science Center in this weekend, on the 7th at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Is solar observing going on right outside the telescape. RASC volunteers are going to be setting up filtered telescopes, and you can take a safe look at the sun. This is a weather-dependent event with a go, no-go call that's going to be put on our website. More importantly, however, is the weekend after that. On Saturday, October 14th from 11:30 to 2:30, we have a solar eclipse. It's a partial eclipse that we're seeing here from Toronto, not the full show. To see the full show, you'd have to end up in the Southwest United States. Now, in the past, we have done this to really, really good crowds. And by good, I mean something like 15,000 people. That's a little on the high side. So what's happening this time around is that the eclipse viewing will not be out front. It will be on the level 3 terrace within the Science Center's perimeter, which means you're going to have to pay the admission in order to get in and to see the eclipse through our filtered telescopes. Just a reminder for volunteers, this is the last call. We're looking for about 10 people with solar scopes and another 5 folks to talk to people, relieve scope owners, maybe give quick little talks, that sort of thing. Contact myself at president@rascto.ca if you'd like to help out. Now, Ed has already talked about the City Star Party at Long Branch. We also have our traditional City Star Party at Bayview Village Park, which is going to be the first clear night of October 16th to the 19th, not Wednesday though. So so Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Again, go, no-go decision is based on the weather on our website. At Millennium Square on October 20th, that's from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. We've got public stargazing. So this is Millennium Square at the water's edge in Pickering. Join us for an evening of free public stargazing along the shore of the North Shore of Lake Ontario. If you have a telescope of your own, bring it along. We'll be happy to set it up and help you aim it at the moon. Please check our website for a go, no-go decision based on the weather. The DDO is having their own solar eclipse event. That's Saturday, October 14th from 12 to 2. This event, however, you got to register online. The links to it can be found at rascto.ca. Space is limited for this one. On Friday, October 20th, 7:30 to 9:30 is DDO Astronomy Family Night. Again, registration required. Links are at rascto.ca. Planetarium Day, 2 sessions on Saturday, October 21st, 1 p.m. to 2:30, and then 2:45 to 4:15. Sunday sun gazing. So this is another solar observing event on Sunday, October the 22nd, at 12:30 to 1 p.m. Again, registration and links are at rascto.ca. And then DDO Astronomy Speakers Night, Friday, October 27th, 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Dr. Xiaohan Wu, The Universe Seen in the Eyes of a Fast Radio Burst. The CAO is still open. At last check, it hasn't started snowing yet. Operations are largely back to pre-pandemic conditions, but there are a few exceptions. The biggest one of note is that we have a maximum of 2 unrelated persons. Whoops. No, I did not want to do that. Hang on. It says back. Yeah. Strange use of the term back. Okay. Yes, so exceptions include a maximum of 2 unrelated persons per bedroom sharing the room, and masking in common areas is encouraged, but preferences of the people who are there will be, if you're there in person and you decide not to, that's all right. Public outreach events and favorable moon phase supervised weekends throughout the summer and fall have resumed. If you'd like to go up, please visit the CAO bookings page for details. It was on our website. Just a reminder again, we're still looking for a volunteer committee chair, a marketing committee chair, and some committee members. And as well, the Education and Public Outreach Committee is always looking for additional folks, especially online presenters and anyone who can assist with virtual star parties with as a telescope camera operator. And a reminder that to volunteer, you first must be a member of the Toronto Centre. Contact myself at president@rascto.ca. Brief plug about membership. Just a reminder that it is renewal season. It's got something I've got to do, actually. You can renew and sign up online at secure.rasc.ca. And with the holiday season coming up in the not-so-distant future, gift memberships are available. Contact the national office at mempub@rasc.ca. And to wrap things up, I'd like to invite folks to what's considered the meeting after the meeting. We meet at the Granite Brew Pub on the southeast corner of Eglinton and Mount Pleasant. 245 Eglinton Avenue East is the exact address. There's free underground parking accessible off of Mount Pleasant. We are usually in the front room. And to everyone else who will not be joining us, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Please follow us on all the forms of social media we've got listed here. If you've been watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Be safe and keep looking up. Good night, everybody.